Welcome to the Executive Hustle podcast, where I am your host, Kirsten, speaker, author, retired CEO, mother of four, and recovering workaholic. Explore with Central Pennsylvania local executives what it takes to lead well, live well, and learn well. Understanding that leaders cannot survive, let alone thrive, without a spirit of curiosity, a discipline of accountability, and a disposition for vulnerability. Let's dive in. Welcome, Hustle listeners, to a special bonus episode of the Executive Hustle. I want to share some thoughts today around a topic near and dear to my heart, and one that I know touches many lives, and that is leadership. So we talk a lot about leadership when I have guests on, and I really want to start diving into some more specifics around what it takes to be a good leader. How can we break apart this topic to make it more manageable? And this is going to be an introductory bonus episode, and we'll probably have a series on this topic, maybe bring in some guests to help us unpack it. But let's dive in a little bit here. Leadership really boils down to getting good at three things. Just three things. I know that's going to sound simple. We actually lead things, right? We lead numbers, processes, outcomes, systems. We're kind of getting the job done. That's number one. Number two, we're leading others, whether we're leading one direct report or we have scaffolds and scaffolds of teams. We are leading others. And finally, you're leading yourself. Your most difficult employee is you. Are you leading yourself away from the urgent and to the important? Are you learning and working on your blind spots? Are you listening more than talking? And are you practicing all in accountability? And gosh, there's so much more to leading yourself. And I'm sure you've been exposed to so many different models of leadership that's out there, right? Frameworks, leadership development programs. Once you dive in, you literally could probably never come out looking into all this leadership work that's out there. But more is not always better. Sometimes it's just more. From spending decades in education and behavior science, my experience has taught me that we are organizing beings, right? We like to group and collect and sort and organize. This is just how we walk through life. And so when it comes to the information that we experience and contact in our daily life, our brain is always categorizing. It's always sorting things. It's a cognitive shortcut, right? And it helps improve our performance. Don't believe me? Go look in your sock drawer. Go open your silverware drawer. This is how we walk through life. And when it comes to leadership, we should expect nothing different, right? So companies that are looking to develop new leaders, if they want to do it well, right, they have to be labeling and categorizing these three essential ingredients to effectively and uniquely coach up new leaders in their company, right? We have leadership domains. Those are the three things that I covered at the top, right? Leading things, leading people, and leading ourselves. Those are the domains of leadership that we can get good at. Well, how do we get good at them? Well, we develop competencies and skills. These are those domain specific, often overlapping, actual day in and day out things that we do, the actions, the things that we do, the things that we say, the things that people see us doing and saying, the things that we become fluent at that help us excel in a particular domain, leading things, leading people, leading ourselves, right? But underneath that, something that we often don't talk about and that's missing in so many companies are our leadership principles, the beliefs that we hold about how we lead. This is specifically how we lead at company XYZ. But over here at company ABC, this is how we lead. This is what we believe leadership is. This is what a successful leader will believe. And this is how they will stand in leadership and behave over here versus over there. This is where it gets, dare I say, personal. And it's often where most companies fail. Every company has a personality. We know this, right? This is the culture. This is what we talk about in how companies behave, what they believe in, and how people act. When you get into a company, you can feel a culture. Well, that culture extends to the leadership. How companies define their leadership will make or break whether or not they're creating leaders in their company. We have two types of leadership culture in any company. You have an accidental version and you have an intentional version. Which one, I wonder, do you have? If you have an accidental culture, your leadership development is, at best, idiosyncratic. It's left up to each manager to lead the team, to decide who's going to what training, who needs what type of development or what type of success for their position. There's no defined leadership principles that unite all leaders in a common philosophy. And everyone can decide their own leadership goals. This is chaos. This is mass confusion, and this is the Wild West of leadership. We're not bringing back lessons learned, and there's no cohesion in how we're going to approach leadership at a company. It's Groundhog Day. Day in and day out, and year in and year out, because there's no connection to the building of the learning that people are having. Compare that from an accidental leadership culture to an intentional leadership culture. Companies that have an intentional leadership culture are companies that treat leadership development as a planned activity that has both individual and group levels. It is the same at the bottom to the top in what we believe and the behaviors that are going to make us successful. We have defined those principles. We have defined those behaviors. We can say, quote, we know what leadership means here, and we know what a good one looks like. We use multiple sources of information and data to develop leadership targets, right? We're talking to people, we're looking at people, we're getting feedback, we're measuring things. We know what we're good at and where we need to go, and we measure it. Every year builds on the next year. You might have a theme one particular year that's kind of the tide rising all boats because we all need to be better at certain things that fit our philosophy. But individually, people also need to get better at the things that are important to our leadership culture. So there's these multiple layers. We know that there's already been a war for talent. And the next battle, in my opinion, is going to be for our very survival of companies. And that's going to be really hard if you don't have any type of layer of leadership underneath your top layer. I read recently that only 12% of companies are confident in their next tier of leadership to take over. So if we say that differently, 88% of companies believe they have no one to take over for their top leaders. That's a crisis of leadership. And we need to level up how we're thinking about it. We know that leadership is an influence. Bottom line, what you do with that influence is your leadership. How does it look at your company? And we can influence in many different ways. How are you thinking about leadership at your company? Are you thinking about leadership at your company? How are you leading your leaders? If you had to build your leadership development from scratch, and you threw it out today and you had to build it from scratch, would it look exactly like it does today? And if not, why? What are you waiting for? It matters where you stand and where you think and lead and listen about this topic. Finding and exploring a deeper understanding of where you are and thinking about leadership development is the first step into moving from an accidental to an intentional leadership culture. I hope this has started some seeds of thought in thinking about how much more there is to leadership development than sort of just signing up people for courses. For more citations and definitions from today's episode, please check out the show notes. We will have more in-depth conversation about each of the topics brought up in this introduction in future episodes. And until next time, keep hustling, my friends. Thank you again for joining me today for another deep dive into the hustle of leadership. You can find more episodes, conversations, and interviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you choose to listen. Subscribe, rate, and review. Remember, leadership is best practiced in community. You know a leader today who needs to hear something from this episode. Pay it forward and send it to them. Don't wait. Until next time, the best leaders not only lead well, they live well and learn well. Bye now.